Blog Talk Radio.
We are the UR Tennis Network. Our mission is to be the voice of tennis. We enlist a team of passionate enthusiasts to promote our sport. We strive to bring interesting perspectives on the many spins of tennis. Our goal is to provide the learners of our sport with current news and information from many angles. We seek active participation from communities interested in tennis, but tennis is not interested in them. We are expanding our outreach. Tennis is a true lifetime sport that needs to be talked about, and the UR Tennis Network pledges to pursue this idea relentlessly.
Good morning and welcome to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's UR Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and we have another great show for you today. Our guest is Joey Johnson. But before I bring Joey on the line and tell you a little bit about him, I want to just say that I had a phenomenal 10 days in Athens, Georgia at the NCAA Division I Championships. I want to thank UGA, NCAA, and ITA for hosting an unbelievable event. They did such a great job making sure that the players, the fans, and us lowly media people, had plenty of access and had a great experience. So for those of you who made it out and who I got to say hello to, it was great seeing you. For those of you who followed it online with the live streaming, I hope you enjoyed it and kind of got a feel for the energy around that event. And for those of you who did neither, you better mark your calendar for next year's event, which will be held at Baylor in Waco, Texas. So mark your calendar now because it is incredible, incredible tennis and so exciting to be around. All right, so without further ado, let me introduce today's guest. We have with us on the air Joey Johnson. Joey and I have had a bit of a snafu this morning connecting, but he is here now, and I'm really excited to have him on the show. Joey has a company called Worthy to Win, and he works with tennis players, not just juniors, collegiate players and other players as well, to help them learn how to win tennis matches. And so, Joey, are you with us?
Yes, Lisa. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. I've just downed my second cup of coffee as I recover from a crazy couple of weeks. I'm good
Awesome.
to go now.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm going to let you tell our listeners a little bit about your background in tennis and how you came to found Worthy to Win.
The way that I'll explain that is that when I was a young kid, I grew up in northern Minnesota, probably one of the coldest places in the country. And I grew up in a skiing family. I started competing at a really young age. And when I was quite young, I don't know, it was probably 8 or 9, my parents split up. And because of financial strains and things, skiing's an expensive sport, and we basically had to stop skiing. And so over the next few years, I was one of those kids, me and my two brothers were always looking for something to do, and we were pretty competitive in nature. And somehow we stumbled into playing tennis. My older brother came home one day and said he had met a guy at the park, and and I was, younger brother, wanted to do something with him, and we ended up becoming just total hackers, playing basically self-taught, just going to the park. And there was an old wall by my house, and we were kind of alone a lot. My mom was working, Dad was away, and we, so I'd go over to this old wall and just hit on it. And that's really how I started getting involved with tennis, and that's where I learned how to play.
Well, that's a great story. We all love the story of the backboards, and I wish more kids used a wall to develop their games these days. It seems they've kind of gone by the wayside, but good to hear that that's how you got your start. And so how did you go from this young kid hitting on a wall and competing against your brothers to developing Worthy to Win?
Well, the significance of the wall, let me answer it like this. The wall is, so I wrote a book called Worthy to Win, and and it basically shares a very specific process that helps someone change their mindset to really begin to feel and do the right things to become worthy to win. And so the significance of the wall is that what I like to say is that everybody has a wall that they metaphorically have to go back to. You know, just like a kid that wants to go become better in tennis, they go to the wall and they work really hard hitting on that wall because the wall never misses, right? And
right.
So, you know, that's pretty much what I did. I mean, it was literally, I was a kid, you know, I started getting visions in my head of being a tournament tennis player. And, you know, meanwhile, I'm playing local tournaments in northern Minnesota and losing a lot. And, you know, at some point I had this idea got planted in my mind that I was going to become a Division I college player. And because I wasn't even close, you know, I mean, I was literally never played a national event, had just been playing local northern Minnesota tennis tournaments. And it was funny because, you know, the kids that knew me, you know, they'd kind of make fun of me for talking about that, but I was dead set that this was something that was going to happen in the future, and it was very much a distant dream at that point. But, you know, life is interesting. Sometimes I'm a big believer that if we put out the energy for something, that sometimes the universe opens up opportunities to us, and, you know, and one by one, that's what started to happen in my life. I mean, I just worked my way, literally very little formal technique, just a very competitive kid, and over a series of, you know, years, just found my way into junior tennis. And by the end of my junior career, I was knocking on some collegiate doors, you know, going to schools in the Midwest, some of the D1 schools, and not one of them gave me a cent of scholarship money. So, you know, from there I was trying to figure out where to go, and I had a coach who's been a longtime mentor of mine up at a school in northern Minnesota, actually called Gustavus Adolphus College. Steve Wilkinson, who's the coach there, who's just one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. He was just recently inducted into the USPTA Hall of Fame with Nick Bollettieri and some other people. Steve had just for years been running this great Division III program, and Steve saw something in me and said, hey, why don't you come work at my camp? He has a camp up there called Tennis and Life Camps, and which is an amazing camp that teaches kids kind of the character aspect of, you know, tennis as well as learning tennis, but it has a great message behind it. And so I went up there, and Steve was trying to, you know, get me to go to school there, and I was there my first semester and got injured, and long story short, you know, my dad had moved to Texas, and he said, why don't you come down here and let's get you rehabilitated, and I redshirted that year, and from there, I ended up playing junior college tennis, and then went on to play at Ole Miss. But as I played, you know, I was one of those guys where I felt like there was just too many matches where I'd get up on someone and somehow find a way to kind of self-sabotage. And that's really, you know, why I started getting involved in Worthy to Win and developing, you know, this training, because I didn't want other players to feel like I did, you know, and I really didn't have the answers I needed to understand how to, you know, kind of fix what was happening.
Interesting. Your story sounds very familiar to me, so I'm kind of enwrapped right now with what you're saying. And so, how did you come up with the tools that you now have to help other players?
Well, one other thing let me mention about Steve Wilkinson, he also coached Eric Buderak. If you know Eric just got to the finals of the Australian Open doubles. I mean, Eric played D3 tennis the whole time there with Steve. Steve was a good coach, you know, and so the tools, you mean like the physical or the mental, or is that what you're saying?
The mental tools, yeah.
You know, I mean, I was just a grinder. I mean, I was a grinder, not as in game style, but as a person. I mean, I just had to fight for everything in my life, you know. I mean, and I learned a lot about, so after college, I played some satellite circuits and things like that, like everyone else. I actually lived abroad for 2 years. I lived over in South Africa, and I was, I just was starting to learn about myself and understand, what happened to me as a junior player. I spent a lot of time reflecting on that. So here's what happened. I was teaching in Southern California, just teaching 40 hours a week, just on the court, grinding away, trying to make it in the tennis business as a coach. And I was in my mid-20s, and I was playing all these open tournaments in California. And I played this one tournament. I write about this in the introduction to my book. Playing this tournament is like a $10,000 prize money tournament. I'd teach all day long and go play matches. I'd teach 8 hours and go play tournaments. And I played this guy who had just gotten back from the U.S. Open. So he was top 200 in the world. He was main draw at the U.S. Open, and played him in the semis of this tournament. I was up 5-3, 30-11 in the third set. He was completely, utterly frustrated and done, and I just choked really badly in this match. And it brought back kind of this flood of memories of other matches from college that, I felt like I definitely were in the palm of my hand. And there was kind of like this, this unseen voice inside of me that would say, you don't deserve this. And, I mean, it was more of a feeling, and I would just, and at times I would fall apart. Now, I had some good wins as well, but way too many of those. So when you ask that question, how did I develop the tools, it started with having those experiences and understanding what it felt like. So I literally remember after that match, I had a dream one night, and the title "Worthy to Win" came into my mind, that I didn't feel worthy at some level inside of me, and I knew that was kind of a message for me, that I needed to understand why I didn't feel worthy, number one, and number two, how I could, kind of claim that self-worth and that worthiness that at some point has to become physical on the court. And that's where it all started. And I started studying, guys like Jim Laird, and I was trying to get, more schooling on the mental side, psychology, just a lot of time, and the whole time I was coaching too. So I was working with tons of players, some very high-level players out in California. And, after, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of coaching people and talking to them and kind of helping them understand themselves on the court, I started to kind of craft this process. And I did it while I was coaching on the tour, actually. I had a player that hired me to work with them as a coach, and realized that, a lot of our work together would be that of the mental side, because that's what I felt like he really needed. And he had been injured and was kind of in a really low point in his career, and had, protected ranking that was down in, the 300 or 400s, but eventually, over a period of about a year and a half, 2 years, he was able to work his way up past 150, and then eventually, I helped him, get through that process and eventually crack the top 100 in the world. But that's where I basically put the process together. It was like a workbook I created for players, and then I started just working with a lot of junior players, and now I work with a lot of college teams as well, and worked with some Olympic athletes. I mean, most of my work has been in tennis, but I've worked with every sport you can think of.
That's a great story. I mean, talk about, personalizing the experience and learning from it and turning it into something that can help others. I mean, it's a great story. So now
Thank you.
You do a lot of work with juniors, you do a lot of work with college, and because, again, my target audience is junior tennis parents, I'm going to stay focused on the tennis piece of it, though, absolutely it's important for people to understand maybe they have kids playing other sports, that the work you do does translate across all sports. But specific to tennis, why would a parent or a player reach out to you? What have you heard reason behind somebody giving you that initial call or email saying, I want to talk to you about helping me?
You mean, so what are the reasons that they would call me?
I mean, what are they telling you that's happened that made them take that step?
Okay, that's a good question because they're different. You know, I have some. And oftentimes it obviously involves the parents. Very rarely do I have a junior tennis player call me up and go, "Hey, Joey, I want you to help me mentally." You know, it doesn't happen very often, but it's the parents who will say, "Okay, we are at this point where we are, utterly frustrated with," and they'll say, "And our son or daughter is with some things that are happening with matches. We just think they should be winning, and." It's gone on for way too long. We've tried this and that, and we heard about you, and a lot of it's referral, kind of word of mouth, But that's one very common one. The other one is someone says, "I know that we know that the mental side of the game is something that is very important, and we really haven't had a structured approach, and we heard that you do have I have a real specific structure. It's not just random mental ideas. There's a process they go through, the worthy to win mindset process. At the end of it, the goal is to get them, there's two things the goal is to get them to say, number one, I believe I'm worthy to win this match because ... and they have to come to that point where they don't count themselves out of any match, even no matter what the other person is ranked or what their experience has been. That's the goal, is to get them to open up their mind. But, those are a couple of the basic reasons why people would call. And it's not always because really mental training, unfortunately, they don't, a lot of people wait till there's a crisis till they call someone like me. Right. but they shouldn't, the reality is the way that the player's mindset affects everything. It affects how they think about their stroke production, who they choose as their team members, how they process wins and losses. It's their whole perspective, and I guess you could say, well, that's just kind of maturing as a player. The players mature naturally, and they do, but a lot of times there's things going on that they just don't understand, and so the process that I take them through helps them. It's really an educational process, helps them really understand the pieces of the mental puzzle, and I've broken it down to there's 8 core pieces. There's 8 potential. They could be mental mistakes, or they could be mental strengths, and that's what I take them through. So
we have.
those are the reasons.
I'm gonna stop you for 1 second. We have a caller on the line. I would just want to bring them on and see if they have a question. We have a caller from area code 901483. Caller, are you with us?
Yes, this is Lisa. Hi, Joey. This is Lisa Carenti.
Hey, Lisa. How are you?
Good. How are you guys? Hi, Lisa.
Nice to have you on the
great.
show.
Great to hear you guys.
How are
you?
Did you have something to share or a question?
Well, I did. I do. I have my son has worked with Joey for several years, starting when he went to Academy at ATA. So I heard your question, and when you asked why would a parent or a child, rarely a child, call someone like Joey. And for us, Ben he really got to that point where he hit the wall. And he was a late developer, not really growing, was probably 5'5", 105 for 4 years, where everybody else was growing. And, mentally, he physically and mentally, he was struggling with the game. But he had some basic technique. He was still hanging in there with the top kids in his section. And he started working with Joey and then went through the process and just really had quite a transformation. At a really tough time in his career his junior career when we really thought he probably might drop out of the game. So it was such a significant impact on his development. And the process was, there's so much I want to say, but the process was, I think, designed so that during his junior year when academics and tournaments and everything are so important, he could still fit it in, which is so important.
I don't know how comfortable you are sharing details about Ben's experience. So I'm not going to ask you questions. I'm going to let you share what you're sharing. But maybe you can talk about, because he's in college now, so maybe you can talk about the transition that he was able to make from junior tennis to college tennis, and how that's impacted him now in his college tennis career.
Well, Joey, you can jump in too, because I think
Sure.
you understand that, how far. I really believe that there's, legs of the stool or legs of the table that need to be addressed in tennis, and often the mental side gets addressed last. Certainly, I think parents often overlook that over the physical or the technical, getting that forehand. But even if you have that forehand and you don't have the mental foundation, nothing's going to happen. And, I had just taken a look at Ben's record when he was a junior, and he had third set losses against almost every top player, and a lot of them in breakers. So, he was certainly in that competitive range, but wasn't converting. And I think Joey truly understands that you have to become, as a player, self-aware. And why is this happening? And I think Ben was experiencing exactly what you described, Joey, that feeling like, I don't belong here, I'm not worthy for this. Or you have so many of those losses, you become subconsciously, you start to self-sabotage. I believe that's where he was. And I think Ben would share that as well. And then as he started doing Joey's process, re-examining his what he's doing out there at 5-all in the third set, or serving for the set, I'm not sure of the process they went through. That was more on their own, but between Joe and Ben. But I just started seeing him transform, and then fast forward to him playing the number one player in the country a couple weeks ago, and being so incredibly mentally tough, and almost winning that match had it not been stopped. So I think there was so much that went on with Joey's help that kept Ben in the game, as well as making him believe that he could win any match. And he truly went on that match against Clay believing he could win that.
And
yeah.
So from the parent side, did you see like a physical change in him as well? Because a lot of times when kids do go from doubting to confidence, there's a physical difference in the way they carry themselves. You hear it in their voice. You see it in their body language. Can you share with us any of those types of things that you've noticed with Ben?
Well, I think he did start to grow physically. So maturationally he was developing. But I could see, you watch your child, Lisa, I'm sure you watch your child so often, you can tell when they walk on the court if they believe or not they're going to win. And I rarely see him. I can't remember the last time I saw him walk on the court and feel like I can't, with that body language that says, I'm not sure I can win this. Mm-hmm. I don't remember the last time I saw that. But, his sophomore and junior year of high school, that was the body language every single time. And, he really he did not believe he belonged there or could win that match. And Joey's process really I think it really made Ben stop and think about where are you and what do you want from this and how hard do you want to work on the mental side. And, Joey, you probably could jump in more and say what you and Ben specifically worked on.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you coming on, Lisa. And Ben, just an amazing young man. He, the thing about Ben's story that's so exciting. It's a great success story. First of all, as when I first met him, like you said, the belief wasn't there. He was fighting a lot of kind of, I think, just other experiences that had happened to him and kind of planted in his mind, like a lot of players go through at times, and that doubt, they don't quite know what to do with it. And, one of the great secret to success of players that can do that are, honestly, it's the parents, you and your husband. The way you guys have just managed him and helped him to really make those decisions on his own and supported him and really done the right things. And, and that's critical, and I try to echo that to parents as they talk to me about potentially working with their kids, is the role of the parent. It all has to fit together. And, and Lisa and her husband are just, awesome at knowing how to help Ben and support him in the way to allow him to go through this process, and to allow him to make those decisions and to allow him to do the work that he needed to do to get moving forward. And so, but he was one of those guys who was just saying, I'm going to do this. I need your help, and let's go to work. And really was in the trenches with me. Really focused and really, at that point where I've got to change this, and that's where they have to get to. The players have to get to that point where they're honest with themselves and they can look at themselves. They can talk about, the vulnerabilities and the problems and really just kind of assess what's happening and then say, all right, let's make a plan. And that's where I come in, because I understand the pieces of the mindset part and their perspective. And, there was a point with Ben when he was really looking for that big win, and he kept saying to me, all these other guys are having these wins, and I'm way overdue. And we had that discussion. I remember he had played one of the national tournaments, and he called me up, and he was super down, and talking about how he just wasn't meeting these expectations, and I said to him, when's the last time you went to a tournament, win or lose, and you really felt, kind of excited by it? I mean, you were pumped up, and you walked away and you learned something about yourself and your tennis game that was kind of new. And he was like, man, it's been almost a year, and that's when I think he had his breakthrough, because he realized that. You agree?
I absolutely agree. I think that was such a key question for him. Sorry to interrupt, but
No.
And I think, what happened is he realized, okay, it's not all about wins and losses. It's about the process. And if I can't enjoy the process, then it's going to be really tough to be out here for a long time. And I think when a child, and I think they should start young, but when a child starts focusing on the mental part of things, it really answers the question, do they really want this? Do they really want this? Because it's very hard to start to address the mental side of things, and that's where you is a child really committed to meeting the goals they say they want to achieve. And I think it's because I used to always say to Ben, you want to achieve all these goals, but these are the things you have to do to achieve that. And if they're not willing to put in that effort on all the legs of the stool, and I think it really shows up on the mental side, because that's hard work.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's when
it's so personal.
That was the turning point.
And they don't necessarily have the maturity to handle facing those personal issues, especially.
Yes.
I mean, especially on the boy side of things. I think they mature obviously later than the girls typically do, and I think they intellectually understand that they need some work on their mental game, but from a maturity standpoint, they're not ready to deal with it. And
absolutely,
it may be a macho thing too. And Joey, maybe you can talk about that. Admitting that you aren't strong enough in your head to go out there and overcome those demons to take the match, to win it. Maybe that's an ego issue and I don't know if you address that when you work with them.
Say that again. I'm trying to get your question there.
Well, my question is, is it an ego thing, a macho thing when talking about the boys specifically, to kind of admit that they're not mentally tough enough to go out there and take the match, or to admit that they feel worthy to win matches. You know, does the ego get in the way of doing the mental work, and is it a maturity thing for them to overcome that and seek out the help?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point you bring up. There's a part in my training program where I talk about, I call it the desperate for success mindset, and which I think is very much woven into the fabric of America in many ways. I hate to say just America, but you know, desperate for success is part of that win at all costs kind of mentality, but it's even deeper than that, because it gets into this thing where the kids feel like they need to win. You know, it's not like I want to win and I'm ready to go compete, but I need to for my ego. You know, I need this to boost me up. I had a college player this year. I work with quite a few college teams around the country, and I had a player say to me, I know that when I play the kind of tennis I'm capable of, it will complete me. And, you know, and I said, you know what? Tennis will do a lot of things, but that's not one of them. It won't complete you. And you've got to let go of that illusion, you know, and it's, you know, like they're trying to fill themselves with this idea that this success is going to make them, you know, it's going to provide some sort of untold happiness in their life, and you know, and of course it does bring fulfillment, and it's exciting, and it's a passion that we all share who love tennis. But that's where the ego gets involved, and they get so wrapped up into that yeah, and with the boys too, you know, well, it's not just boys, it's boys and girls. They do feel that vulnerability is very hard to get to sometimes, you know, to be able to talk about that.
And Joey, you know, Ben was exactly there when you started working with him. His days were defined by wins and losses. If he lost in a practice match, he was down. Yeah. You know, and you really helped him say, Ben, this, you know, this can't define your life at this level.
Yeah.
And
right.
You really helped him back up and say, you know, look at the process again, at that forehand, getting that better serve, getting a better volley, and it's not all about wins or losses, and it's not going to make your life better. You know, Ben really for a long time believed if he could just win those matches, he would be, you know, his life would be complete.
Well, one of the challenges, I think, is, you know, nowadays the kids have instant access on a daily basis to where they stand versus their peers in terms of their USTA ranking, their ITF ranking, their tennis recruiting rating. I mean, all of that information is at their fingertips every single day. And it's very difficult, I think, and, you know, I'm just a mom observing this, but I think it's very difficult for these kids, especially those who are getting closer and closer to the college process, to divorce themselves from the results and continue to focus on just getting better every day, doing one thing better today than you did yesterday, and having that be the goal. And I don't know, I mean, Joey, do you see that these kids get so caught up in their race that, you know, they're devastated by a loss because, oh my gosh, what's that going to do to my standing? I'm not going to be able to get into this tournament now because I didn't win.
No, for sure. I mean, you know, how many kids go check tennis recruiting, you know, on a daily basis? I mean, it's unbelievable. And you know, and again, I'm not, you know, when I coach people, I'm never going to say don't go. I always make them tell me why they believe they can win a match. You know, it's not like you say, go out there and just, you know, have fun, have a great match. No, it's go out there. Do you believe you can win this? Tell me why. I make them say that. But yes, they have to be seeing the big picture. You know, winning. You want them distanced from that. You know, you want to know that they believe they can do it. Absolutely, and here's why. But I'm going to go out there, and now it's the process. And like Lisa was saying with Ben had some holes in his game that he kept mentioning to me. And I think the longer he worked with me, the more he realized he needed to retool his forehand. He needed to, beef up his serve and his conditioning and, and all these things. That's kind of an outgrowth of a healthy mindset. They start seeing what has to be done, and so.
And that's really where you see do their goals align with how much they want it. Because then they start to become self-aware and they have to admit where their holes are, and are they willing to put the time in the work in.
Right. Yeah.
That accountability.
Sorry, Joey.
Well, I was going to say that accountability, I think, is such a big piece. And, I've talked about this before. I've written about it before. I think it's a failing of our system right now is there's very little accountability. And for the kids, their form of accountability is their ranking. I mean, the numbers don't lie in their minds. If I'm ranked number 1, I'm better than you who are ranked number 50. And I think changing that mindset, it sounds like, Joey, that's the type of work that you do with these kids, and helping them understand, how to separate those issues out.
Yeah, absolutely. The worth cannot be based on the win, but at the same time, they have to feel that worth and that they're deserving, that they have to gain to get it done, and that's where you want to get them. With Ben, there came a point though after he'd really worked hard on his mental emotional game with me and really getting it right in his mind, getting the message right, which he did, and then getting his he tightened up some of his technical parts of his game, and then there was this point where it's really cool to see when you're talking to him and he's like just going, no, I feel so confident now. You can hear it in the way he's describing matches. He's becoming more responsible. He's taking the bull by the horns, and that's what creates momentum. You look at Ben's season this year. He started off the season with mono, missed the first 7 matches, and steps in and has really a banner freshman year. He goes 17-10, and then basically upsets the number 1 player in the country, although he didn't get to finish the match. But that's what I call momentum. That's exciting when you see a player do that, and that's why Ben Donovan is one of those guys that I just applaud, because he did the hard work. He took responsibility. He was self-honest, and he did not give up. And he's become a better person, not just a better tennis player, because of it.
Lisa, do you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about Ben's recruiting process and how the work he did with Joey impacted that process?
Sure. I think I tell Joey all the time, it's the reason Ben is still in the game. There were a lot of coaches that helped along the way, but I think Ben got to a point where he really felt that, I think it was his junior year at Kalamazoo, and I had spoken to Joey. They had worked together most of the summer leading up to, the August Kalamazoo hard courts, and I was sitting in the kitchen with my sister saying, this is going to be a disastrous tournament. And next thing I know, I get a call from Joey. I hadn't spoken to him for a long time. I knew he had been working with Ben, but, busy summer. And Joey says, Lisa, I'm concerned the wheels, the train might be off the track. And, he was so aware of right where Ben was. And to involve me as a parent was so helpful, because I felt like, wow, a coach in his world understands where he is. And it was at that point where I could relax and say, okay, this coach who's very much involved with him knows where he is, and hopefully they can work it out, even if this tournament doesn't go well. And the tournament was, and the reason I mentioned that tournament, because all the coaches were there to watch, the players, and this was a big recruiting year, and I don't think Ben could have played worse. I think he was triple crown, they call it, where you lose every match at Kalamazoo, and it's the worst stage to lose every match. And he was just it can't get worse than that. So I know that Ben has coached other juniors now, saying it can't get worse than what happened to me, but what was beautiful about that is that Joey was able to help Ben get a perspective on that. And in the recruiting process was, I think people saw Ben's game and thought that he had a lot of potential, but they also saw that he wasn't converting a lot of the matches to wins. And so the people that were very much interested in him went away to a large degree. And, Ben saw most of his friends were top 10 in the nation and getting recruited to all the big schools. And he just decided, I want to go where I'm going to play, and I want to be a high-impact player. And I really respected we stepped out of the decision process at that point. And although, we thought there were some Ivy Leagues that were recruiting him, and he's pretty strong academically, we probably felt, at times, let's just go for the academics. But he knew what he wanted, and when he visited Cal Poly and met with Nick, he fell in love with it. And we stepped out at that point and let him make the decision. And I don't think that there could have been a better choice for him. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. And, and I think having coaches like Joey say that you don't want to sit on the bench your freshman year. It's nice to tell your friends you're recruited to this Division I school that's top 10 in the nation, or big SEC powerhouse, but do you really want to sit on the bench? Because next year all of these really great players are going to come in, and you have sat for a year, and so I think it's really what you want as a player. You have to really examine that, and people like Joey can really lay that out and help. So not only on the mental developmental side, but some really key decision points. Joey had so much impact on Ben's career, and we thank you, Joey.
Well, no, you're welcome, Lisa. And I do enjoy that part of it. When I played in college, I went to Tyler Junior College my first years, but I was recruited by Billy Chadwick at Ole Miss, and Billy was, and to this very day, I talk to him all the time. Billy retired this year and has had an amazing career there, but he really was one of these guys who he genuinely wanted me there, and I knew that, and I knew for Ben, one of Ben's coaches, Brandon Fallon, out at Advantage Tennis Academy, I think had a lot to do with helping him find that scholarship. But I also enjoy that process of helping just talk the players through what's going to be the right fit for you. Let's talk about it, and I do engage in that with them, and sometimes I'll even make phone calls to the coaches for them if they want me to, and chat with the parents about it as well, and really help them to understand what's going to be the right fit for them. So I think that's a fun part of the process for me.
It's interesting that you brought up the whole concept of what type of impact the player wants to have as a freshman. And I just recently shared an article that Ross Greenstein wrote evaluating the freshmen from this past year and the impact they've had at their various schools. It's interesting reading, but I'm having that conversation a lot with my son right now. He's a rising high school senior, so recruiting we're in the throes of it, and it's after kind of coming off the NCAA Division I championships these past 10 days, and my son spent quite a lot of time both in Athens and at Georgia Tech on the rain days watching these teams compete and these individuals compete. It's been interesting to kind of talk with him about where he feels he's going to belong and choose, for his college choices. And I don't know, I think he's still a ways away from really honing it in and figuring out exactly what he wants and what type of impact he wants to have. But all of these types of experiences, viewing these players and having the ability to interact with them and hear their stories is incredibly valuable.
Mhm. Yeah.
It really is, and I think that I agree with Ross. I read his article, and I think toward the end of that article, he said something like, I don't know why anyone would choose, not to have an impact. And I agree. the juniors work so hard and give up so much to go to college your freshman year and not play, or and even they split up the practices at some of the bigger schools, would seem to me, such a sad way to spend your freshman or sophomore year, and then you have a whole new group of really talented people coming in the next year. I don't know why any junior that really wants to play would make those choices, and there's you just don't really develop if you're sitting on the bench,
right?
And that's but there's so many players that just want to say I'm at a big powerhouse.
Right.
I think that's the key point right there. That they have this image in their mind of where they should be, and like Lisa was saying, and they get caught up in that and aren't quite real with themselves about where they could be, and then get on and be an impact player on a team and continue to improve. That's the tragedy, right? If someone goes to that big powerhouse and just because they've had that image in their mind and for whatever amount of time, and then they end up riding the bench, and it happens all the time, and it's a tragedy.
And I see it with so many people in Ben's class. It is tragic. There's no other way to say it. I look at some of his friends and I think, wow, they had so much game.
Well, and it was an interesting piece this past week with the Division I championships. Is each of the teams, though only 6 players are in the lineup, they are allowed by NCAA to bring 9 players with them to the championships, I guess in case of injury or illness or whatever, so that they can fill their lineup. And those players who are numbers 7, 8, and 9 are working their tail off with the team every day, getting up early and practicing, and they're, dealing with the nutritional restrictions and the partying restrictions and all of that, yet they have no court time. And one of the things I've actually encouraged my son to do is to reach out to some of those 7, 8, 9 players and talk to them about what their experience is like on a day-to-day basis, and truly have an understanding of what it means to be just outside the top 6. And it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. But I love hearing, Joey, that's part of the work you do with these kids, is helping them kind of, formulate what's important to them for college tennis and how to make the appropriate choices based on what their goals are.
Yeah, I go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Joey.
No, you're fine, Lisa. Go ahead.
Well, if I could say one word for Joey's program, and maybe I'm misrepresenting it, Joey, but I think you make them self-aware. You make them aware of where their holes are in their game. You make them aware of where their holes are mentally, and I think in the recruiting process, you make them look honestly at where they are going to have an impact. And that's often hard for a child to say. And it's hard for them to look at their friends who may have an impact on a bigger school, and they're just not there yet. And, so I think becoming self-aware is really the banner word for your program. And maybe, I apologize if I'm misrepresenting that, but
no,
I think
it's true.
Really helped.
Yeah, no, I think it's true, and because what I always tell the guys is I say the answers are all inside of you. You just got to understand how to see them, and as their perspective gets cleared, then they can see that, and that awareness is there, right? That awareness is what brings them to that, and they create I call it distance. They create the distance from all the kind of the background noise, the voices that are pulling in different directions, and they can really hear what's inside of them, and that voice is what tells them all the decisions they need to make, their inner voice, that says you need to fix your forehand, or you need to become better in this way, you need to become more fit, you need to not be so hung up on winning all the time. I think of the great quote on center court at Wimbledon. It's from I think it's Robert Kipling's poem, If, and it says, if you can, basically it says if you can, handle triumph and tragedy in the same way, you'll be a champion, and they all have to learn that. There has to be that inner voice, and that's the same inner voice that's going to tell them what's the right school for them, what's the right coach for them, right? I mean, it's all those things that, Ben Donovan and a lot of other players are going through, and when they connect with it, through that awareness that Lisa was talking about, it's amazing how they can change their career and they can change their life, and it can be a really rewarding experience, and that's the goal,
I think there's a process where they feel like, they've almost failed. I think Ben felt like, oh no, if I don't go to this, I spent all my junior career at academies, making these sacrifices, and I'm not good enough to even play on, a powerhouse team. And that's how, he felt almost he had to go through that process and see that was not a failure, that this is part of the process, and he had to learn to accept that where you can have the greatest impact is the best place, and that's the win. That did not come easy.
That's a hard process. That was the path for him, though, and I guarantee you some of those powerhouse teams would have liked to have Ben now. A
couple of the coaches, they joke. They tell me that anytime he's interested in it, they all joke. But Ben, he loves Nick, and he loves Nick's program.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I think, just to give credit where it's due, is that, I always like to say one of my secrets is I try to, it's always great to work with players who have really good coaches. And, in Ben's instance, because I do a lot of consulting out at the Advantage Tennis Academy, and I have my younger brother, Jimmy, is the founder of that academy, and Ben worked with with Brandon Fallon, and then Jimmy himself really, I think, were critical pieces of his puzzle, technically getting his game where it needed to be, and I try to support the coaches. That is my job. I mean, I need to support them in what they're doing and help keep the vision consistent with what that player needs. And a lot of the work that's done is getting the players to just really listen to the coaches and internalize what they're trying to get them to do, and do it as fast as possible,
and I think also, Joey, you communicating where the player is to the coaches, I think that had such a critical impact on Ben's development, and Jimmy technically with Ben's forehand and his serve, and I think Brandon became very much aware of where Ben was emotionally through that communication. And that's why, I think all those pieces have to be in place in the communication. And you facilitate that so well. And, I have to say Advantage Tennis Academy does some phenomenal work because they believe in the mental side of things as well.
Well,
they really do.
I was going to ask you that question, Joey. Have you ever gotten any pushback from the technical coaches on the work you're doing, or have they all been receptive to the suggestions you have or the insights that you share?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the natural pushback would be just a coach just wanting to, be doing all of it. I mean, I guess those are probably the students I'm not working with, is the ones where the coach is, wants to kind of be, doing everything. And, honestly, there are some technical coaches who are very good mental coaches. I mean, they have their own way of doing it. I'm focusing very, very specifically on the mental process, and that's probably the advantage, And just so you know, I have a very strong technical biomechanical background myself. I mean, I've studied it a lot. I mean, and I've spent a lot of time being a technical coach, but, for the last about 17 years, it's been more focused on mental. But, I coach my own son. I have an 11-year-old son. I have 5 kids. They all play tennis, but he's the one who's, really got the tennis bug, and I'm his on-court coach. But I do understand that process. I obviously try not to interfere with it. I'm there to support the coach when I'm the mental coach. but I really understand it, and that's one of the advantages I have. And so, yeah, I guess, the only pushback would be when a coach says, I really don't want a mental guy involved. I don't think we need it. That would be probably the only instance. And these days, most coaches are pretty open to it because they realize there's only so much time in a day, and then they're very focused on, what they're trying to do technically and tactically with players.
Right. Interesting. Very interesting. All right. Well, we're getting down to our last few minutes. So I definitely, Joey, want to give you the opportunity to explain to listeners how they can get a hold of you, how they can access your information. So we mentioned that you have a book, Worthy to Win, but talk about the other ways that people can access the information that you have to offer.
Okay, awesome. Well, my website is just worthytowin, just spelled out, .com, and here's some of the training that I've developed that people can access. I've got my book, and it's on Amazon. And you can get it on my website or go to Amazon. It's just Worthy to Win, and that is kind of reviews my 8-step mental foundation process, where it really helps them to understand the whole Worthy to Win mindset. That's the program that Ben went through, and that's the program that I always encourage players to start with. It's also available in the form of an online training course, and so I've got a lot of the college teams, for example, I've worked with that have used that. The great thing about it is the players can access it on a smartphone or a computer. They get a username and a login, and there's a course. They listen to each of the trainings. There's 8 trainings, and then there's assignments that go along with each training. It's all packaged, and it's all there for them. At the end of it, they create what's called their mental game plan. And so, they go through the whole process, and at the end, they create this mental game plan, and then they can do it all on their own. And the great thing about that is it can be a self-study, and then they can ask me to help them with certain pieces of the puzzle that are more specific. And I also take players through that whole course like I did Ben individually. Ben did my individual training where I personally walked him through each step of the 8 steps. And then typically after that I do I call it mental tournament prep, where I work with players before and after events, where key tournaments, will help prepare them, and then after the event we'll do a debriefing. I've got players right now that I'm working with that I've got a couple guys on the tour that just had one I talked to at the French Open that we're reviewing matches after they're done. And I do it all the way down to kids that are, 12 years old. So that's a little bit about the training that I do. I also do team trainings where I'll do kind of like, the webinar type Skype trainings with teams where they'll get in a room and they'll maybe have me cover a specific aspect of the mental that the coach feels they need, as well as they'll sometimes bring me in and I'll speak in person to players on the team. So all that information is on my website, and I just encourage people to just engage in that process in any way that they can. Whether it's the book or the online or chatting with me personally. And there's actually an assessment they can take on my website. It's free of charge. Takes about 20 minutes to go through, and it basically asks them a whole bunch of different questions relating to certain situations, and it emails me kind of an overview of their assessment, and then I give them some thoughts to get them started, and that's just a service I provide at no cost for people.
Well, that's fantastic. So I just want to say, Lisa, thanks so much for calling in and sharing your experiences with Joey. And just full disclosure here, Lisa's actually the one who put me in touch with Joey to begin with and said, I think he has a lot of great stuff to offer. Thank you for that. And Joey, thank you for coming on. I know we had a few technical issues getting started today, but thanks for persevering.
Yeah.
And, I really appreciate the information.
And I want to say thanks to Lisa, too. She's a great tennis parent, and she's a good example of, how to support a tennis player. So appreciate that, too. And thanks for letting me come on your show.
Well, thank you, and my pleasure, Lisa. You're doing great things, and I think your work is really so helpful to so many parents. I wish I had it through the juniors.
Well,
so keep working hard and keep it up, because it's a great resource for parents. And always great talking to you, Joey.
Yeah,
thank you for the work you do. Thank you for the work you do.
You are welcome. It's a pleasure working with you guys. Thank you, Lisa.
Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Okay,
sure.
bye-bye.